This podcast is for a mature audience and may be viewed as inappropriate or insensitive to some. Listener discretion is advised. The intention is to share conversation of like and unlike-minded individuals as they try to be the best them they can be in a life full of challenges, searching for love, acceptance, and positivity. Call 669-241-1422 and share yourself or catch up with Sweet Baby J for an anonymous face-to-face interview. Feel free to call in with questions, stories, thoughts, or anything you would love to talk about and share. Nothing is off the table when talking sweet with Sweet Baby J at 669-241-1422.
Ladies and gents and ladies, once again, you are here talking sweet with the one and only Sweet Baby J. As always, a no-face, no-case scenario in which we allow our beautiful guests to share their name or not. Young Stallion, would you like to share your name or not?
Yeah, so my name's Rob Cook.
Oh, first and last name.
Yeah.
Want to give your social security, maybe?
No. You'd have to buy me dinner first.
Damn. So right here, as we're going to talk about something very interesting, because you do something that I would imagine that not a lot of people do.
Yeah, it's a little specialized, I guess.
I think so. But first, you're getting some of the Sweet Baby J sorbet and Italian nice. What do you think, man?
I'm going for a first taste here, actually.
Okay, there you go. Let me know. Honest opinion is always appreciated.
You make this yourself?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty good.
So what we're having here is the margarita with tequila.
So this is a new one? This is the first for you?
This is a first, yeah.
Wow, it's actually really good. I've never had anything like this ever.
Well, I'm that kind of guy. I'm usually only used to a woman saying that to me, but okay, I'll take it. What is it actually that you do?
I guess my technical name would Ground Operations Systems Engineer, but if we're going to cut it down to layman's terms, I'm a spacecraft pre-flight engineer, basically. So I get it ready to fly while it's on the ground, and we're waiting to get on the launch vehicle. So before you see the liftoff and the flames and everything, there's a lot of work that goes on ahead of time. Overall, there's hundreds and hundreds of different procedures that people run. You always see people with binders and flight controllers, and that's kind of where I come in, is getting it ready, getting it on the rocket, getting the fuel in the spacecraft, and then once it flies, our specific spacecraft is reusable, so it's like a little shuttle. It goes up, and then it comes back down, and when it comes back on the runway, I'll be there waiting to receive it and pull the cargo out of it from the space station.
So I got so many questions, bro, because this is beyond interesting. What kind of fuel does a spaceship use? Because gas prices are up.
It depends on which ship you're talking. My last job, we had two propellants for the spacecraft side, and then the rocket has different ones too. So they're all way more than gas prices, I'll say right there. A lot of the time they're called hypergoals.
Hypergoals?
Hypergoals, yeah. It's a weird word. Spell check doesn't even believe it exists whenever I write it in a document.
Really?
Yeah, but it's basically any two things that when you combine them, they blow up instantly.
So it's a combustible type thing.
They're like two materials that hate each other. So
and that's what you use. So
yes.
It's like a husband and a wife.
Well, it's like a very angry couple, I'll tell you that much. They do not mix. Maybe a divorced couple.
Damn.
They end up combining, and then when they combine, they instantly basically catch on fire and explode. And in an instant, you have a flame, and you can produce thrust. You can run it through the different engines. So we use a hypergolic combination of fuels where you inject both into the engine, and you don't need a spark plug or anything, because when they touch, they go.
Instantly.
Yeah. This type of material is used on all sorts of different spacecraft just because it goes every time. It's just chemical. There's no moving parts. They touch, they go.
So you do all that pre-flight stuff?
Yeah. So while it's on the ground, basically our spacecrafts, my job is Dream Chaser. So Dream Chaser is a space plane, and then it has a cargo module on the back that carries some extra cargo. It's got some solar panels, and it's got a few extra maneuvering thrusters. So that gets packed up separate than the space plane part. And then when we're in that 30 days to launch time frame, we finish the cargo load, and then we attach the two elements together, and then it gets fueled as a unit, and then it gets put inside it's called a fairing. It's like an aerodynamic nose cone, and it's a shell that goes around everything to enclose it. And then we pick that up, and that goes onto the rocket. And once it's enclosed, it's good to go, and it just goes onto the launch vehicle, and we're waiting basically at that point.
What was a shuttle that went up and I think it exploded going up? Challenger?
Yeah, so that'd be Challenger. So we're a lot smaller than that.
But the thing is that, wasn't it it was a very small part that made that whole thing happen, wasn't it?
A lot of my coworkers from my old job, actually, also at the Space Center, a lot of them worked that, actually. Wow. So they were on site working things, work in the investigation afterwards even. Some of them basically have given their perspectives on this. There's a great Netflix documentary on the subject, actually. They go through everything on it. But for Challenger, it was a O-ring. So they just launched when it was too cold. So those procedures, they usually have boundaries where it's like you got to check all these boxes before you can move on to the next step. If you don't check those boxes, you have to have a real hard line in the sand. And sometimes there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of money exchange. There's a lot of eyes on you, basically. And they're all saying, like, hey, you better go. And in that instance, people kind of rolled back on what was acceptable. And that's why, like, most new employees, they go through a room at the Space Center where it has the wreckage from the Columbia and Challenger disasters from the 2 space shuttles that did break up. And it basically is to instill like a feeling of safety and the importance of, hey, you got a lot of eyes on you. You have potentially lives. Like our ship doesn't have any people on board. It's just cargo. But we're working on a crew version as well that will have people. So
how do you even differentiate between, because you said the shuttle that you're working on is a space plane. Oh, what are the differences between a space plane and a space shuttle?
That's kind of interesting. So the shuttle, like the one that everyone's familiar with the big orange tank, airplane on the side and 2 side boosters, that one is made of a few different parts. So it's called a shuttle because the whole thing is the shuttle, like the orange tank, the boosters, everything. But the airplane part is just called an orbiter. So that's the actual space plane. So the shuttle was like the end to end, like the whole thing, the rocket, everything. With us, what we are just the plane. And our whole idea is we can ride on almost anybody's rocket, but we're not a shuttle necessarily. We are just the space plane.
So the plane actually connects to a rocket, and it goes up the same way as all the, what is it? What are the ones that Elon Musk has?
Falcon 9. So
Falcon.
That's one of the options that we're looking at too. The one we go on for our first flight is called Vulcan.
So Falcon 9 is one of the options that you guys will be using in order to go up?
So that's not what we're flying on, at least out of the gate. It's one of the ones we're looking at right now. It's competitive price and everything, but we got a good deal on the one that we're flying. So it's called Vulcan. It's by another contractor called United Launch Alliance, which whenever I say that, everyone always is like, oh, that's got to be a fake name or something. But United Launch Alliance, they've been working on this thing for a while. It's got a few of the first flights coming up. So first flights, you get a discount basically because there's a little more risk.
What's the discount though?
I mean, I can't talk to the actual discount.
Oh, okay.
But it's pretty significant.
It's not like Uber rates though.
Oh, no, we're not talking Uber rates. We're talking, I don't know, Black Friday deal type stuff.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. So
we'll give you $20,000 off of this $30 billion.
The discount percentage is in the millions.
That means this is big money stuff.
Yeah. So even like a Falcon 9, like if you're going to ride on that, and that's pretty cheap, that's like 50 something million, 58, 60 million easy.
When you say to ride on it, you mean set the ship on it or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. A lot of people I've been hearing, I'm not exactly sure if it's taking place, in which people are actually flying on these rockets to go into space.
Yeah, actually on Falcon 9, they have a ship that goes out of the spaceport regularly called Dragon. They got 3 of those, basically. One's up there right now. One went up, I think, April timeframe. And then the other company that's big out there, Boeing, they have a ship too that's called the Starliner. And it actually just came back and flew one of its first missions to the space station.
Are these commercial? Because the people are paying big money to fly these flights.
Right now, a lot of them are NASA, actually. So NASA basically created this contract, and we're on one of them. So there's the commercial resupply service, which is what we do. So we resupply the station. They give us cargo. We get it there. And then they decide what cargo they want back, and then we come back and land that on our runway. And then for the crew team, that's a commercial crew program. So basically NASA says, hey, I got this contract. Show me what you got. And people bid it, and they say, hey, this is my ship. This is what I'm going to be able to do. I can take 4 people. I can take 6 people. It's going to cost this much per seat, and this is how it's going to work. And they look at all the proposals, and they say, like, you 3 go do a little more work and show me what you got one more time, and they give you a little money for that. Then they basically down select, and they say they could pick just one of you, or they could pick 2, they could pick all of them. Depends on how much money's in the pocket, basically. So they picked Boeing and SpaceX, and both of those now have crew spaceships that they're going to be operating. SpaceX has been running theirs for a while, and they did have one basically tourist flight where they flew up 4 people and brought them back in about 2 weeks or so. And then they sent up a group of NASA astronauts. So that's the core contract. The other ones are just people paying.
Do those people need to do the same type of training that astronauts need to do in order to go into these flights? Are they just like, any Joe Schmo just finished eating a burger, like, I'm ready, but I paid? How does that work?
You've been on an airline. They got to explain to you the problems, that you could run into. Hopping on an airplane, they give you a little short safety brief. They talk the spiel. They move the things, whatever. These are a little bit different of a machine because the risk factor is usually higher.
Much.
While you might not get the full astronaut training program, you're not training for years to ride on one of these things. The Axiom guys, they're a private company. They're going up basically to do some work, make some money basically, and come back or work on a project. One of the other ones that flew up kind of late last year is called Inspiration 4, and it was like to raise money for St. Jude. So it was 4 people. Only one of them had actually been an astronaut or flown. So he was kind of like their supervisor. The other people, they got about a year of training basically to say like, hey, this is what you'll experience. This is how it'll be. But for some of the other guys, they'll go even shorter. You'll have a 1 week or 1 month even program where they teach you how to escape it if the thing starts to sink in the ocean, how to get out. They cover all the safety stuff.
Sounds pretty damn important.
Yeah, well, because they land in the ocean. If that thing starts going down, they got to be ready to bail out, basically.
I always wondered, right? So this thing lands in the ocean. What do you do if you land and there's just sharks everywhere? Like, oh, snap, it's feeding time. What do you do? Or what do they do? Or what are they trained to do?
One of the big things is you don't want to have to get out.
Yeah.
First and foremost, if nothing's wrong, you don't have to get out. And you just sit in the capsule and they fish you out of the ocean. And once they fish you out of the ocean, you're in a boat, and then you just get out in the boat.
Is it like a Navy ship or something? Or the same company that sends the shuttle up also has this, they own the boat that fishes them out?
So for SpaceX, yeah, they have their own boat. They got like a little mini submarine boat, like those research subs, and they just use the crane that would pull the little submarine out, and they pulled the capsule out. At my old job, though, I worked on Artemis, which is the new moon program. So that capsule comes in and it lands in the Pacific Ocean. It's a bit bigger. So as a result, you need something a little heftier. So they contract the Navy, and the Navy drives up a big landing ship with the drop down door, and it basically floods the inside of the ship, and it
takes them in.
Yeah, it takes them in, and then it's got some winches that spool them up, and then they drain it, and you're on a solid deck. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool, man. Like, how did you get into this?
I'd go back being 12, wanting to go watch Space Shuttle take off because I grew up on the Gulf Coast. So you could see it if it was like a nice clear day and everything. But yeah, my dad was a mechanic, so there was always cars around. He used to give me random stuff, go take apart, go entertain yourself, hand me a screwdriver and a carburetor, and I'd be taking it apart, but I couldn't figure out always how to get it back together.
Yeah, I remember those days. So your dad inspired you to do this, pretty much.
To some degree. He was a car man, so a lot of the stuff he was like, yeah, it's pretty cool, but I don't know, I just like grabbed onto it, and I went to school and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then, I don't know, mid-90s, they had a lot of like engineering TV shows or whatever on the History Channel, and I'd occasionally catch one and I'd be like, wow, that's like amazing. I totally want to do that. And we had my local science center. They did summer camps. You could do like a marine biology one or something like that. And they had a rocket one where you go build a model rocket or whatever throughout the course of the week. And then on Friday you fly it. And then that's the end of the camp. It's like 1 week thing. And I don't know, that I did like 4 times in a row, and then got into high school and I started volunteering at that camp. So I was now on the other side. And then that went into my like college application, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do that basically.
Oh, and you're big into the model rockets and everything, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm melting a little bit here.
No, hey, listen, actually take your time. You can eat up, bro.
It's real good. I will say, like I said, I've never had a margarita sorbet. That's real.
I'm glad you like.
That's a real stuff. Thanks, man.
Hey, listen, they're on sale. Don't forget.
It's like going through school and everything. I just kind of gravitated to stuff. Originally, I was looking at the Air Force, basically. Maybe Top Gun was real effective on me or something.
I can imagine with what you do for work, you're incredibly busy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Because it's been so busy lately, we've a little trouble with like attrition of losing some people where they're like, man, this is a lot of work right now. I'm kind of burnt out because these projects, they go for years. My old job, they still haven't flown, and it's been about 11 years or so of working on the same thing. And it's like problem after problem. It's a lot of fatigue. So you get a lot of shuffle where people go into a program, they work it for like 4 or 5 years, 8 years even, and then they get the experience, and somebody else is like, hey, man, you want to come over here? And that's kind of how I ended up on the space plane for my old job on one of the capsules. Hopping around, people jump in and out and everything, and
you got to replace people. You got to fill people in.
And then you got suckers like me who are trying to fill the gaps sometimes where like I lost one of my teammates, and She was like excellent, but now that she's not there, I've had to like attend all her meetings. So I'm like, man, I'm so burnt out on being two people for a little while.
It's so crazy because this is something that's happening all across, I can only imagine, the world. That burnout is really taking place. But I would think that with what you do and it being so specific, so specialized, I would think that people would really not move. But is the industry opening up that much that there are more opportunities presenting themselves?
You have no idea. It's like crazy right now. Somebody was describing it as a renaissance. You got all sorts of private companies. You got a lot of government contracts. And then you got startups who are just trying to break out and try and make their way, basically. NASA is what everybody thinks when they think space, but a lot of the time NASA is just kind of taking, and they have a plan where they're like, we want to do these objectives. And then they basically come up with a budget and they throw some money out and they say like, hey, who wants to work that? And that same contract process I was talking about, they're usually paying for that first phase of bids.
The initial phase, yeah.
So, I mean, you have companies that start up even just to try and get that first bid where they're like, give me $100 million and I'll get rolling. And then they go and they hire and then they develop an entire company basically out of trying to get that. In the Space Center, I work out at Kennedy Space Center, and a lot of my team actually works in Colorado where we're manufacturing the spacecraft. So at the Space Center, it's a real different environment, but out in Colorado, they have a lot of space companies as well. So they have similar, people jump around. But at the Space Center specifically, we all see each other. So you go to the subway on Center and you see like some of the guys from Boeing, Lockheed, all these big defense contractors, and then some of the smaller ones that are doing like all sorts of other stuff. So everybody kind of knows each other.
I can only imagine sometimes you might be on the shuttle and be like, yo, man, these guys are really annoying me. Like, well, you know, we do have a position opening.
It's like all the time. Or you'll have somebody jump ship and they'll go, anybody want a job?
I could only imagine. Wow. So when you're doing this, what do your family think about you or what you do? Or do they like, wow, there's the shuttle guy, or, you know?
It's kind of weird. I always feel like I don't want to be, like, I'm almost like head down. Like, I don't want to be singled out or something. A lot of the time, I'm really bad about going too in depth sometimes talking about things. So like my fiance, I have to put up like the wall of don't slaughter her with too much technical jargon about something. Like if she's like, well, why are those lights yellow or something? I'm like, well, man, we're dealing with a light problem right now, blah, blah, blah. And I start going. So a lot of the time I tend to dial it back a little bit. So like with like my mom, my brother, my sister, I tend to just kind of like keep it high level. You know?
Give them the surface.
Yeah. Because for one, they
don't even need to know all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's like, do they even care? But like, I will say I took my mom this past weekend to the Space Center for the first time. She came to visit and I was like, yeah, I'll take you. I'll show you some of the places that I work and everything. And they have the museum and everything there too to talk about stuff. And I got through just going and she's like, after a lot of it, she goes, doesn't this all make you nervous? And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, making a mistake on something. I'm like, oh yeah, all the time. It like comes around and it hits you and it's like, man, I am both very lucky and also a lot of people probably wouldn't
that pressure.
Yeah, they wouldn't want that pressure. And that's where you get some of the churn even, where some people that they'll want to take something to a point and then they'll go, you know, I don't want to be responsible for it beyond this point. You know, if you want to fix it, you want to change things, that's fine. I'm going to go set up something somewhere else and I'm going to get the processes or whatever design started. And they're more of an opener. And then you have people who are like more of a closer.
The closer.
Yeah. So we brought in a few people like that from SpaceX recently where they set up a lot of their stuff, like real down and in, real bright, sharp people who've been through the ringer. And, you know, they show up and they're like, yeah, you don't want to do this, and this. Just kind of lay it all out. And all of a sudden, you know, you have someone from a totally different culture coming in and they're like outside your culture, and some people are like skeptical of that, but at the same time it's like they know their stuff, they did it, they lived it, they got the bruises. And in college there was a professor, he called it getting a bloody nose. So like the more you deal with the problems and stuff and the more you like struggle with it, the more you get a bloody nose on it. Once you come out of it, you're real strong. But
yeah, exactly. It's funny, right? I see you're a cool dude, you have some suaveness to you, but I could only imagine people would think that everyone that's working on projects like this are super geeked out. Is that the case? I think like the Revenge of the Nerds where they had the tape on the glasses and stuff.
So there's like a level of weird. I think you got it. Somebody sent me this meme, one of my friends from school way back when, like elementary school, about like the different kinds of weird. You got like the fake weird, you got the closet weird, all sorts of stuff. I find a lot of the people in the industry have been kind of closet weird people where they're like, yeah, I'm normal, blah blah blah. But like you get them like a little off guard and they might do something a little weird, like they'll make just like a weird sound or something, or you'll be like, oh, what's that? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm just listening to my like Celine Dion or something like that. It makes it fun. I mean, there's a ton of personality in people, but there are all brands of people out there. So you get the more straight edge people who are like calm, laid back. And I've seen basically full spectrum of people, but I think it's a little more weird just because you need like a minimum level of weird to function.
It's just so crazy. I'm absolutely fascinated. And how we even came to talk is I saw you, I don't want to say playing with rockets, but you were constructing a rocket. And I was like, yo, my kids want to do that. And you actually set up a Zoom meeting with an astronaut with my kids. I thought that was absolutely fabulous, and I'm forever grateful for that. When you are talking with these astronauts, how are they? Do they like, yes, I've been in space. You're an Earthling. You stay there. Like, how is that?
No. I thought through this sentence right before I said it. And I was like, this is going to sound so cheesy, but they're real down to earth people.
Exactly.
So you got to talk to her too a little bit. I
yes,
guess.
I did. Yes.
So Janet's awesome.
She really was.
She is a super humble person. She's actually our company president. So my company's called Aerospace. It's like a genre kind of this other company called Sierra Nevada Corp, which is like a defense contractor. And Janet's a 3-time shuttle astronaut. So she's really, really knowledgeable on
She's really out of this world.
Yeah. So on the surface, you would never know. I mean, when I first met her, even I didn't put that together just because she's like super humble. I've never met someone of the 2 astronauts that are in our company, both of which very nice people, really quiet for the most part. Like they kind of keep to themselves a little bit. Janet especially is like really big on like outreach and everything. So we've had occasions where she's like taken us out and we've done company dinner where she's wanted to orchestrate that and everything. And like, it's all just everybody at the same table. Not only is she an astronaut, but she's like the company president and she's just sitting around with us. And like our office is, as of right now, pretty small. It's like 23, 24 people. And to just kind of grab everybody and take them out to a bar or to dinner or something like that at one of the restaurants out by the port, it's like super, super cool to have that close connection.
Well, not only that, when I hear things like that, especially coming from a president, especially in this day and age that we're in, I think that creates more of a team.
Oh, yeah.
It creates more of a team. It creates more of a camaraderie. And it just makes everybody... I think it actually makes you think twice, 3 times, 4 times about even leaving that position because it's not just leaving a job, but you're leaving somewhat of a family.
Yeah, exactly. So I will say the person on my team that we did lose, the reason for her changing position, she didn't leave the company. She just changed roles. Even talking to her when she was kind of resigned to that decision of pretty burnout, I'd want to change scenery, change programs or whatever. That isn't a decision that a lot of people that I work alongside that they usually relish. They're not like, man, I can't wait to get out of here a lot of the time. Usually they're pretty broke up about it because I'm not leaving because of you or you or you. I'm leaving because of me, you know? And even like our CEO, talking to him, he's similar type personality of he wants to have that camaraderie. He wants to have that family aspect of instilling a desire to not only want to stay, but want to grow with the company.
Within the company.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about work-life balance, which I personally think is a lot of BS. But it's like sometimes, especially now, work is so demanding. It's almost as if they don't care about having that balance. But for you and for what you do, I think burnout is something that you also can't have because when you have burnout, you have mistakes.
Yeah,
Mistakes
exactly.
will cost a lot of money and it costs lives. But do you feel that they are actually considering or considerate to your work-life balance?
We have certain rules in place that kind of protect that to some extent. So if you're going to do something hazardous, like put fuel in a rocket or a spacecraft, there's like shift limits. So you're not even allowed to be on the shift more than 12 hours, basically. Okay. So if you exceed that 12 hours, timeout, you're out.
But you also live an hour away from work. So that's a lot also.
Yeah. I mean, in that context, if you reach that hazardous limit, you got to take 24 hours off a lot of the time or you have to have a certain amount of time off as well before you can come back. And so like you could have 12 on, 12 off, but like at the same time, it's like you're considering the implication of that person being off and coming back and wanting to make sure that they show up fresh, good eyes, they're ready to do the job, they're not tired, and everybody's looking out for each other. So like we've had a couple occurrences where something doesn't quite pass the sniff test. And if you say something, you got to be heard, basically. If somebody's, I don't know, nodding off or whatever, and they're expected to go use a forklift or something, or operate a crane or guide something in, somebody's going to speak something to them and say, hey, you know, man, don't worry about it.
We'll get somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
You'll sit it out a little bit.
Yeah. So in my position, I not only write the procedures, but I'll be managing floor activities. So I'll be standing there basically looking over the shoulder, you know, holding the clipboard, saying like, these are the steps we got to do, sign-offs we need. We got to go through all this process.
Like OSHA.
Almost, but like
Space OSHA.
Yeah. But OSHA's almost like God for us. We can't go out of the box on OSHA. For me, I'm kind of managing things. If somebody needs something, they're like, I'm going to need a ratchet. It's not in the toolbox. You know, I'm the one on the phone saying like, hey, can we get one down from the logistics center? When it comes down to that, you have your techs who are like your hands, basically. And then as the ops lead, you're looking at everything and you're judging whether or not things are coming along properly.
The way they're supposed to be.
Yeah. So you have to have some of that judgment. You got to know the system. You got to know the people too. And one of the things that you see a lot is these techs, they work on stuff. Some of them have a lot of experience. Like they worked on Gulfstream, 747s at airports. They've been building airplanes, building spacecraft. You don't always know who you're talking to. And you have people who come in as an ops lead, and it's on the pay grade and on the command structure. It's a higher, I guess, authority role. But some people come in, they don't have that head for it a lot of the time. And they'll tell the techs to do something, and the techs will look at them like,
you tripping.
Yeah. Like what are you talking about? It's almost like lieutenants or whatever coming in the military, and they're coming in over the enlisted. And the enlisted are like, man, I've been through the ringer. I know this isn't going to work. And they're saying, go ahead and do it. And they're like, man, it's not going to work. And you get this kind of push and pull. So
yeah, I've lived through it many times.
Yes. You can't lead a team that way. So there's this other, like, outside of the technical, like, people aspect of just being able to talk to them and be like, hey, man, what do you think? How do you feel about this? How do you feel about going over and unhooking that from the crane?
So everyone has to be comfortable with what's taking place.
Yeah. If we're going to pick something up with the crane or whatever, you got like it's called pre-task briefing. You go over, you talk through like, hey man, this is what we're going to do. This is what everybody's going to be observing. This is what's going to happen. And in the event of a problem, we're going to do that. And here's your roles.
Do they ever create problems in order to, let's say, simulate in case things go left so that everyone knows? Because piss poor planning leads to piss poor performance.
Yeah, isn't that the 5 Ps? One of the things that we do, I don't know if this is shared, like this verbiage is shared by any other industry, but we call them pathfinders. So it's like a series of events or whatever to practice something.
What could go wrong?
Oh, well, it's not even just what could go wrong. It's just how to do the thing. And then every step of the way, you're looking at what can go wrong here. And you start with a clean procedure and you got your red pen and you start scribbling in the margins of we went on hook this, it got a little squirrely, we backed off and figured out you gotta leave these 2 bolts in until last, and it's like these 2 specific. And then you go back in, and once you got it all redlined, you can run it again and you can see how that does to improve your scenario. So like Dream Chaser, we had one not that long ago where we got all the lift hardware. So you can't just pick the thing up. It's all covered in tile. It's like a glass egg, basically. So it's got real specific crane hardware to reach in and grab it. We have this kind of crazy contraption with like a claw that comes in and grabs this like barbell type piece on the front, and that holds a lot of the weight up when you pick it up and you rotate it from horizontal to vertical. And like that whole structure, that whole system of everything, it'd never been tested. So we went down, had about a month of taking and using the crane and picking this thing up and putting it down like over and over again. And
Pink things up to put them down.
It's just like over and over again, I like stress testing, you know, how does this work? Oh man, we can't get it to sit back down properly. You got the thing hanging like the last, I don't know, like quarter inch, not even over the object. And you're sitting there with pins and like a broom even trying to push things to get them to align because you can't quite reach into where it is. Cause I mean, the thing's 40,000 pounds hanging from a crane.
But do you guys do, is there a simulation or a dummy one that you guys do all this on first before you take the $1 billion or whatever equipment and start maneuvering with it? Do you use something that's not the real thing?
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I wish
Don't drop it.
I wish more sometimes, man. The one that we nickname Iron Bird. So it's like a big steel dummy version, basically.
But the weight is in comparison and everything.
Yeah. So same weight, same center of gravity, so it balances the same. And then we got different stuff for like the cargo module, all the different parts, like spacecraft, again, glass egg. So everything's like, it's usually got like an analog or a replica of it, or you build two and you use one to test on and practice with and break. And then the other one's the real one. So that drives the costs way up. But when you get to the real deal and you're in the major leagues, you're ready to go.
And you know what mistakes not to make.
Yeah, exactly. And then your techs and everyone, usually they've seen it too. And they go, yeah, we remember what happened here. I remember what happened on the real thing. These are all challenges we're working through and stuff.
I'm going to ask you a personal question. Does this pay pretty good? Because it sounds really intense.
So, like, my old job...
Or wait, let me say this. Working in this industry, does it pay well?
I'd say so. I mean, I tend to look at it as like, you got doctor, lawyer, engineer. Engineer is probably the bottom of those three. But...
still pretty good.
Yeah, it's still pretty good. It all depends on where and what level to, like, aviation techs and, like, automotive techs and stuff. They get paid pretty well most places. But like when they end up in aerospace, that's usually a top for them. If they're working on an airliner engine or something at MCO over here or wherever, those are all like pretty peak for them. And then like in the engineering world, aerospace is probably towards the top because, anywhere where there's a lot of money being exchanged, there's a lot of salary usually. Chemicals probably the top. So, you have people inside different organizations who are making even more doing a very specific thing. Like I just do chemistry on rocket fuel. So being the only one who can do something, I mean, that pays big. At my old job, I had a lot of NASA guys, and one of them worked space shuttle for like 14 years or something like that. Super, super cool guy. 1,000 hours of skydiving experience. Honestly, this dude had a story for everything. He was attacked by a buffalo and survived.
The most interesting man in the room.
Literally.
Until I walk in.
I don't know. He'd give you a good run for your money. He's super cool dude. But he talked about at one point, one of the guys he used to know early in the shuttle program, who was one of those, I am the one guy who does this thing. And that dude knew flight computer. So the guidance and navigation computer in the space shuttle, he was there when it was designed through the entire thing. He had retired. Okay. And this guy, the one who skydives and everything, his name's Jim. And he went in and he's working with this guy and he says to him on like one of the last days that he's there, hey man, it sucks to see you go. And he goes, oh, you can call me, but it's 10 grand for the first minute. And then every minute after every 10 minutes after that is another 10 grand.
And he was serious.
Yeah.
Wow.
So at one point, probably STS 75. So launch number 75 or whatever the shuttle, they're on the launch pad, clock's ticking down. Most everything's fine. Flight computers coming up red over and over again. All like, yeah, we can't solve it. We can't figure it out. We don't know what the issue is. We don't see this error. And they call him at 3 a.m. And he picks up and he goes, do you accept the charges?
Holy shit.
An hour later.
$10,000 a minute, he said?
No, it was $10,000 for the first minute. And it was like 10 grand for every 10 minutes or whatever after that. So like 60 grand later on this phone call, finishes talking to him. And he says, if you run into the problem again,
please
give me a call. And he goes, let me know if it fixes it or not. And he hangs up and he goes back to sleep and they launched on time.
Oh.
And they paid him.
And it was worth it.
Yeah, they paid him like 60 grand for an hour-long phone call.
That's OnlyFans to the next level.
I mean, that's like...
What?
That's like, I don't know how you get to that point. Of like,
but let's get there.
Man, I really know this box. This is my box.
Hey, there's no other box like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, like, they called him several times. And the next time the one guy, Jim, he talked to him like friendly, not on the the dollar. He was like, hey, how's it going? Thank you so much for helping us out there. And he goes, yeah, you just bought my boat. Thanks.
Man, I need to be specific with something like that. I don't care if it's gummy bears.
Yeah. I mean, as long as it's something and it's real specific, I don't know what it is, like certain real niche stuff. I mean, they had people who were like really good at just welding two pieces of metal that are real small or whatever, really precisely. And like they would call those type people up and they'd be like, how do we fix this? Can you come in or whatever? And they show up and, you know, they're like,
this is my rate.
Yeah, here's my rate. Go. Because like consultant is crazy money when you're specialized. And that's where like Titusville, where the Space Center is, you end up with a lot of people retire around there basically. So you have a large wealth of knowledge really, really close. So a lot of those people get brought back in as consultants and then they go in and, you know, they work part-time and then they make more than they worked at their old job, basically just kind of like basically being tech support, attending a meeting or whatever.
Helping out.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're like, you know, I just like doing it kind of, you know, it's cool.
Well, my kids want to do this. I'm going to really push them to it, man. My goodness gracious.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like be
buy
real
daddy
specialized.
A boat. Wow, bro, man. Listen, I really want to say thank you, one, for setting up that meeting with my kids, but also for just talking about what you do. It's pretty damn interesting.
Oh, yeah. I've been told I make a good tour guide. Actually, so you know the big building at the Space Center, the one with the American flag on it?
I don't know. That's not the one with the shuttle in it.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's
okay.
A really, really tall one. When people used to come in there like, outside, I used to do tours. Oh. So I got real good at the walk backwards and give the spiel until they started doing hazardous stuff in there. And that got clamped down on because, you know, you can't have people walking around with a loaded booster or whatever in there. You get pretty good at like doing the spiel. And I don't know. I like talking about it and it's cool. People like getting it shared and everything.
Pretty damn dope, man. Wow.
Yeah. I like it enough to where I started making it like personal time thing, like model rockets and stuff to where like come home and not every day because, you know, sometimes you're like, man, I don't want to see another one of these. I started doing like YouTube and stuff I started doing YouTube where I do a build or whatever, show the build process, you know, film it, and then kind of do voiceover and stuff of like how it's all put together and stuff. I guess I liked it enough to take it home with me.
Yeah, I see. Even with the rockets that you do, for those kids or adults that even want to get into this, when you shoot the rocket up, how do you know it's going to come down?
I mean, you just try and do your homework right beforehand. They make a open source. Growing up to now, internet is crazy. Like the amount of resources you can get and everything, the amount of stuff that's just out there to buy, like 3D printers, laser cutters, all this stuff that didn't really exist when I first started, like even just sitting in my garage with my dad or whatever. So like all the stuff that's just out at this point to where you can make things is so amazing that no matter what, there's probably a resource to go pull on. Like you can get an open source Google Chrome type extension that does rocket simulation, you know, and it'll show like if I have 4 fins in this engine and it's this long and this heavy, this is how high it'll go. The wind's
so the fins make a difference?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, not get too in the weeds. Your fin area basically pulls this one point and it's like the center of pressure, pulls it back towards the fins. And it's wherever you have kind of the most like area, like if you're going to cut it in half, find the center of that area. That's like that center of pressure. And then there's like a physics thing basically of where it balances and where that center have to be like in line with each other, where the weight has to be forward basically. And it makes it kind of fly like a dart where you have that like natural want to arc. And then you can simulate that in the computer and everything. And then if you build it the same way you built it in the computer, then you know pretty well like how it's going to go. As long as you're not like flying it in a hurricane or something like that, or putting it in a situation that you didn't plan for.
You mentioned something one time we were speaking. It was very interesting about GPS, that if a vehicle is going too fast, the GPS shuts off.
Oh, yeah.
And that is meant to do that.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. So Uncle Sam doesn't want you to build a cruise missile, basically. So you got these like little GPS chips in like literally everything. So like you can kind of see it actually if you're able to get onto a cell phone on an airplane. When you go into like Google Maps or something, it won't track you because it can't. But it can on takeoff because you're going slow enough. So there's a speed in there that the GPS can't figure out. Well, it can. The GPS basically says, time out, you know, we're going a little fast here. It interprets what you are as a missile.
Oh.
And at that point, it says, we're not going to do this anymore. And it starts interrupting the signal from GPS. So GPS at a high level is a constellation of satellites. And they're all in like a really predictable orbit. And they kind of crisscross. And they're just kind of sending out a radio signal. And it's a clock. And the clock signal is just going. And the GPS chip, which is like proprietary science bits in a little computer chip, interpret that signal, and it has a radio in it that receives it, and it's all made to all work together. But there's a little, because they're so small, it's like crazy. There's a little processor in there that can interpret it, and it can tell how fast things are going. And it says, like, 4 seconds ago, you were going 200 miles an hour. And then all of a sudden it's like, now you're going over 500. And it's like,
no, not good.
Yeah, you're going too fast, man. And then it cuts off the signal, and it says, like, you're out of COCOM limit, and you don't get any orientation.
So these cars that they're saying, we got a car to go 220 miles per hour, 230, 250, 300. I don't know if that's even a thing, but there is a cutoff limit where, let's say, the GPS won't work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Where, you start to approach speeds, and it's like, that's not a normal object.
Wow.
Yes. One of my buddies who also does rockets and everything, he was trying to go really high, and he wanted to track it on GPS. And he ran into the issue of, I can't, because it's going too fast. So he started trying to ask around, like, companies of, hey, can I get one of these broke out ones? And can I put it in here manually, like solder it in with a air gun and stuff? And couldn't make any progress because nobody wants to give it to you. And when they do, it's tracked. So it has, like, that chip is owned by this person, and it is in this object.
We'll be in big trouble if it is going someplace where it doesn't need to go.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So they're all accounted for. A lot of them are in Uncle Sam's arsenal there.
I bet.
It's like one of those things that you don't really think about, but on our average day, we're not going a few 100 miles an hour.
Hey, the fastest I ever went was 145. And I was like, ooh, I'm going pretty fast.
Yeah. So, like, for my purposes, I'm not bothering, but like in Dream Chaser, it's got one basically, or more than one even, I think.
But it hasn't launched yet.
But all of those pieces of equipment have those components in them, and they're all tracked and registered. And there's all this stuff, like you even got to have an FAA license to come in and land from space. Like it's a specific space reentry license to say, I can land in these places, and I'm going to come in this corridor, and I'm going to land about this long, and you give them all your information because you're going to start making sonic booms over the area.
I heard a sonic boom out here. I literally went outside. I thought something fell on my house. They are loud.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's fine with it until they actually got to experience it.
I thought something fell on the house. I was running around like, what in the hell?
Yeah, no, we get them more at the Space Center because we're on the coast. So if something's going to break the sound barrier, it does it over the Atlantic Ocean. So occasionally there'll be like an F-18 or whatever doing some sort of Navy or NASA testing, and they go supersonic, and you can hear
Wow.
And then when SpaceX boosters come back, they sonic boom twice on landing.
Yeah, that's the one I heard.
Yeah, the bum.
Exactly.
And it is really loud.
Is it as loud? Because I'm all the way out here in Orlando. But when you're that close to it, is it like you have to hear earplugs in, or?
It's not unbearable, but it is startling. The last one, so the one you probably thought something fell off during. So that one came back to land, like on the land. Sometimes they go out on the barge or whatever. But when they come back to land, everybody gets real excited because it's like, oh, shit, there it is. The spot we stood on was probably like 2 miles away. So, like, as the public, the closest you can get is like 12.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And you were there for that.
Yeah. So when we're at work, we just go. Like, you just go outside and you're like, there it goes. And then you go back in and you go back to work or whatever. All right. But at the same time, everybody's like super hyped after that. It's kind of hard to focus. But this one came in, and we drove out onto the Air Force side where the landing pad is. And we're like, across the street from Subway, of course. It doesn't sound too glamorous. But, this thing comes in, and it's silent the entire fall. And it's far enough away to where when the sound happens, it's behind where it starts. So when the engine lights up and they launch, you see it go, and it's leaving the ground, and it's probably like up here, 45 degrees off the ground. And then you start hearing the of it getting louder and louder, and the sound's always behind it. So when the sonic boom happens, it's delayed, and you don't know, there's no indicator for the boom of when it's going to happen. But when you're that close to it, there's much less delay. I'll tell you that much.
Wow.
Because I knew it was coming, but I didn't know when it was going to be. And I was like filming it, and you can see on my video with my cell phone the moment when I'm like, oh, because it's like this.
It shocks you no matter what.
Yeah, it's like a whipcraft. Even like 40, 50 miles away, it's loud, and it's like really sudden because it's literally the air snapping kind of.
When you're out there and you're hearing this take off, you're seeing it land, you're right there. What is the nervous factor for you?
And that's kind of part of the excitement. Some people you'll talk to and they'll be like, man, I'm filming this because if something goes wrong, I want to have that video. And then there's the other people who they're just like, wow, that's amazing. And there's a PA announcement that comes on right before on all the loudspeakers, because we have like, even along the sides of the road, there's little loudspeaker horns in the buildings. It says, this is about to happen. In the event of a problem, call blah, blah, blah. In the event of this, seek shelter immediately. Listen for further instructions. Keep an eye out, because you don't 100% know. And if you didn't know something was happening when it did, that would be a bad day. Yeah. Things are pretty reliable now. A lot of the rockets taken
Thus far.
off. Yeah. Well, a lot of the rockets as of late have been pretty problem-free. Like back in the mid-90s, there was a string of like 3 or 4 events. One of the people on my old job had said, yeah, we were in the blockhouse, which is like the launch control building for the launch pad. And for this one, because it was an older launch pad, it was an older rocket, they're like right next to each other. So everybody parks in this parking lot that's inside a mile from the pad, probably less. Thing starts going up, and there's an awesome video of this on YouTube, and it's still favorite, probably explosion that has ever happened. And probably about 20 seconds into the flight, maybe a mile up, not even, like really short. Like it gets off the ground, it goes, and then it just pops. And this thing has solid boosters on it, so the solids are shooting like burning chunks of aluminum out and everything. And it goes up like a firework. You got pieces going everywhere. And they all start raining down. And because of it being so low to the ground, everyone's in the blockhouse and they can't leave because there's chunks of burning everything around them. The parking lot got obliterated. And
how do you explain that to your insurance company?
Well, that funny thing about that, one of the guys, they got the okay to leave. He calls State Farm in Merritt Island there, and he goes, yeah, so my car was destroyed by a rocket explosion. And they go, are you trying to screw with us? And it just so happened that the news was on in the office, and the person like stopped talking on the phone, and they go, okay, sir, I'll take care of you, I guess. And because they saw it, and man, this thing went up, and you're like amazed anything on the ground survived. One of the guys was saying one of his friends always got cereal in the morning. So you work a launch campaign, you're there for like a month basically of coming in. It's like long hours, and he would go take his cereal out there, and because there's usually an office building and the actual launch complex is pretty sparse, he would go take the bowl back afterwards. So we put the bowl in his truck, the spoon in the bowl, and then he came back after this explosion. And ceramic has real high temperature, so the bowl was in the truck. The truck is melted around the bowl, and the spoon is a puddle of melted metal in the bowl. Yeah.
Does he still have this?
I don't know, actually.
That's pretty damn cool.
That would be a real cool...
Yeah, there's a story behind this.
I know, right? like this weird bowl right here, yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, oddly enough, like the longer I've worked out here, the more people I've met who've been in that explosion, and they all have their different things. One guy's like, yeah, I drove everybody out in a van that I stole. I stole this van from one of the government rental spots. We like jammed a screwdriver in the starter
just to get out of there.
And I took everybody out, and we left because there was a fire next to the building and the smoke was coming in. So
see, my thing is, I want to know, how did you know how to do that?
Yeah,
there's a story behind things like, well, I may be described as a geek, but I had a past. You never know.
Well, I mean, it's the Air Force side, so you never know.
Yeah, you ain't lying.
Kind of cool, all the different stories, though, just out of that incident. And then the people were like, yeah, they might not have been actually in it, but they're like, yeah, man, after that, I had to deal with so much paperwork. It sucked.
I would hate to deal with the paperwork after any one of these situations.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Any incident whatsoever. Like you drop something when we're working in the VAB and everything. And I mean, it's 500 feet up. People drop a ratchet, and ratchet falls all the way to the bottom of however far that is. And the steel workers would be working on this launch tower, and they drop something or whatever, and it could be like small. You could have like a nut or something, and it could be like this big. But even if it's a little nut, a washer, a penny, they got to fill out a report on that. So
yeah, well, the damage, and if nobody goes and recovers it, what damage can that make?
Yeah, now that's a projectile, exactly. Or it gets stuck in a gap somewhere.
Sheesh. Bro, once again, man, I really appreciate you for the time. Talking Sweet here with the one and only Sweet Baby J. Got to tell you, man, you the best.
Thanks, man. I mean, like I said, it's cool stuff to talk about. So I always like to share it because a lot of the time people have their concept of what things are like. And then in reality, it's like pretty laid back in some regard, like a prime time, like this is game day type mentality in there. But I mean, like I said, we're all a little weird on the inside. There's a lot of silliness and stuff. Everybody's joking on weekdays or whatever. We'll all go out to the bar or whatever and have an evening, like happy hour once a week to go de-stress and just get out of it,
No doubt. Stay great, big.
That's about it.